I'm Teresa Bienken, CEO of National Speakers Bureau Canada and Global Speakers Agency. We're one of the original speakers bureaus in North America, and we envision that the sharing of ideas inspires action to make the world a better place by bringing you expert speakers and thought leaders for your conferences, training sessions, and programs, whether they are in person, online, or hybrid. I'm pleased to introduce today's session. Both of today's speakers put humanity at the forefront of all they do. General Roméo Dallaire is a celebrated advocate for human rights, notably with the impact of the Dallaire Institute for Children, Peace, and Security. One of the world's most sought-after leadership speakers, he embodies brave, ethical leadership and a solutions-based approach to times of crisis. His motivational words inspire audiences to challenge the status quo, be passionate about their work, and take pride in their team and country. Marie-Claude Michaud launched a major transformation of the Valcartier Military Family Resource Center, which served over 9,000 military personnel, veterans, and their families during the highest tempo and war footing of the Canadian Armed Forces in decades. Challenging the male-dominated hierarchical structure there, she developed new systems with principles that put human beings at the forefront to encourage leadership without armor, in a relationship of reciprocity and cooperation with the organization's leadership structure. For this special co-presentation, Dallaire and Michaud will introduce their new work, combining his expertise as an on-the-ground leader and crisis management expert with her 25 years of leadership and development with the Department of National Defense. Together, they share the principles and application of a benevolent leadership culture. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Teresa. And we're very happy to be able to do this co-presentation because there's been a transformation after giving years of speaking engagements through the NSB on human-based leadership, more human engagement leadership. I've discovered with the work that Marie-Claude and her experience that she went through, that we have, in fact, a deeper sense of what human beings are in the process of leadership, and that there's a reciprocity in there. There's a synergy between those being led and those who are leading that can, in fact, reinforce each other, empower each other, and gain far more success and at a much less and smaller cost to the individuals and the leaders themselves. But that needs a culture change. It means a shifting from the hierarchical methods that we've used and the male-dominated hierarchical processes that exist today to something far, far more subtle and much deeper on the human plane, which I think women will bring to the table. And Marie-Claude is certainly an example of that. So I'll turn the table to Marie-Claude to launch us into this.
Thank you very much. And as you said, Teresa, I worked 25 years with the Canadian Armed Forces as the executive director of the Valcartier Family Center. And I was a woman, a civilian woman, entering a warrior male-dominated culture. And to make my way through that culture, I had to perform, I have to excel in everything that I was doing. And we were at the highest operations never known before, because we were sending troops in combat. And I remember the general in Quebec coming to see me and telling me, well, Marie-Claude, be ready. Be ready because we're going to have casualties and we can't fail. So by saying that, he was sending me the message that I couldn't fail. So I pushed myself and I pushed my team to exceed the expectations of the chain of command and the expectations of the military families. And during 25 years, I've been bullied, harassed, threatened by people in the chain of command. But I continued to do so. And at what time? Well, I paid a price and I totally crashed down. I crashed down And what happened is that I was abandoned. I was abandoned, isolated. Nobody in the chain of command contacted me, nobody in my team. And I was so shocked by the way I was treated, because there were mental health programs all around the place in the system. But no, for me, there was nothing there, no communication. And I met the base commander after I came back, and he was sorry. And he was telling me, well, I didn't know what to tell you, because they don't know what to say to a leader who failed. And for them, I was now a leader who failed.
I think that there's two very significant elements. One is that Marie-Claude was recognized as the highest performing executive director of all the 32 leaders of family support centers in Canada, and her personal engagement got even the families into the defense policy of 2017 that is still there. So there was a dominant feeling of having to push into the system and doing it within a construct of this very male-dominated, very hierarchical milieu that was not particularly attuned to civilian input, let alone women input into how they used to do things for years and years and years. The second element is that there we have a leader who's been injured in the accomplishment of her duty, and at a time when we should be communicating and should be establishing a link to sustain that leader, bring that leader back, people were abandoning, people were isolating, people didn't know what to do. And that's what we do when we have people who are injured psychologically. It's as if it's a dishonorable injury, where in fact it is a very honorable injury. People have given their all and they need to be reinforced, and the team and the chain of command or the leadership structure has got to reinforce their willingness to communicate with them and to bring them back and to build from that. And that is a major feeling. Without peer support and without doing that communications link, we're losing people. People go off because of physical injuries, a lady going to breast cancer, everybody's encouraging her to win and get a cake and so on. But someone who leaves because they just can't handle it anymore, the psychological side, well, it's as if they have to disappear, unknowingly. And when they come back, if you win that breast cancer fight, they're very keen and happy and so on. But if you come back, from a psychological injury, it's as if, well, you're sort of oozing your way back in, and people will say, oh, well, you're back. And there's no cake and there's no willingness to really understand and to reinforce. This has got to change. We're losing too many good people because of that.
Well, I had no cake, for sure. So I went on a sick leave for 8 months. And during that time, I felt so ashamed, and I felt the guilt for the impact that my leadership had on my team, because it was a toxic one. And I realized that I had integrated the male-dominated culture, this warrior culture, with an armor. And I realized then that I had to find something new, that I had to find a leadership that put the human up front. So through my previous research and new ones, studying and writing, one day I found out something about benevolent leadership, a simple article. And then I went deeper in this field to understand more about this leadership. And it was the solution for me, because it was clearly putting up front the people in your organization. So it guided me transforming myself first, getting rid of this armor that I didn't need anymore. And it guided me to establish the next steps when I came back to the center and to meet my team. And I knew that I had to open up to them and to recognize my mistakes, to recognize in front of them the impact that my leadership had on them, had on their health as well. And I explained to them my determination to change the culture in the workplace. So over the next 4 years, I developed, trialed, tested, and implemented this new culture, this new benevolent leadership. And we got so impressive results.
I think the significant shift here is the fact that not only did the center continue with its high performance, and in fact was able to meet all its challenges, but it was not taking the casualties, not abusing its people to the extent it was before, because it was a far more participatory leadership construct, a leadership in which the leader and the members demonstrated their vulnerabilities, demonstrated who they were and how they were living it through and coming to solutions. And there was enormous amount of communications and team structuring to build that 4-year trial that ultimately has led to now principles of fundamental benevolent leadership with the human up front. And so different from the military and all the past that we've been working with, where the mission is up front, people will come second and yourself third. Well, that could not function anymore within the context of what we're meeting in the field and in industry, and with the new millenniums introducing themselves into our workforce more and more, with more women present and more attached to a different set of parameters for what they consider to be success.
So what I did also during these 4 years, and I continued later, is to define the benevolent leadership principles. And for example, your communication as a leader must be transparent, authentic, sincere. Because by doing this, you empower your people to be a part of the solution. If you don't do that, they will feel it and they won't trust you. Acknowledge your mistakes openly. That's not easy. That's not easy, but nobody's perfect. I did it. And I get so much from my team after doing this. And ignoring your mistakes, it takes away a learning opportunity for both yourself and your team. And you know what? Leaders think it's not normal to be vulnerable. Well, it is normal to be vulnerable as a leader, because it doesn't mean you're weak. It only means that you are human. And by being at sometimes vulnerable in front of your team, by being human, you're sending them a crucial message that they too have the right to be vulnerable and to be human in the workplace. Recognize the impact of your ego. The bigger your ego is, the smaller your conscience is to your people. And the last one for you today is welcome and listen. Everybody think they are able to listen, but listening is looking at the people in front of you, hearing, smelling, feeling, seeing in yourself the reactions you feel when the people is talking to you. And by doing so, you empower people. And it creates a partnership, a reciprocity between both people in the leadership. So they all own, in a way, the mission. So some of the results that were very amazing only after 3 years, and the last year was even more, it's increase in the mobilization, motivation, engagement, retention, recruitment. People from other organizations and also from public services were applying at a center because they wanted to work in a better human environment. And what was very interesting for me is that I saw, well, people in the chain of command seeking insights in this new culture and using them with their teams. And what also I had as a result that was really, really important for myself as the leader of the organization is that I now had people in the staff wanting to get jobs with more responsibilities. Before that, nobody wanted to have a job with responsibilities like human resources. But now, even millennials in the staff wanted to get jobs like mine. So my succession was secured. Yeah, it was secured. So I wrote my book called Leadership, Leader Without an Armor during the pandemic. And I go deeper in my book because I saw so many parallels with what was going on with the pandemics and the leadership crisis we're going through, and all the staff that are burned out everywhere, and the crucial thing of putting the human first, the human up front.
There are extraordinary lessons that were learned in shifting a top-down leadership construct into a more participatory one where vulnerabilities and injuries on the task, psychological ones and others, were considered honorable. It wasn't, these were not dishonorable activities. These were the impacts of an over-demanding style of leadership that ultimately had people pay the price. And not being able to communicate with the human being, and I speak communicate more like a communion with the human being, to interface with them so that there's a sharing of that leadership role and even responsibility in a way to achieve the mission together, because there are vulnerabilities on all sides, and reinforcing each other and wanting to reinforce and then wanting to participate in that benevolent participatory atmosphere that wanted them to be engaged in the decisions and ultimately in the success of the organization. And that's what happened. There is enormous amount of potential in every human being. Leadership will always produce results far beyond what the science of management says is possible, because there's no limit to leaders. But if you don't have the appropriate culture to the organization, and that the culture does not put the people up front and first, you cannot sustain whatever management demands of you. And the cost is simply too high. And ultimately, yeah, you have a good chance of failing. And so that's what we hope to inculcate in our presentations and pass on as a new culture framework of benevolent leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you to both of you. And it's clear this your passion and your expertise comes from a lived experience on both sides, and seeing how you meld together those experiences and your thoughts about the future of leadership and leadership reform is refreshing. So thank you.
You're welcome.
We do have a few questions that have come in, and we've got time for a couple of them. So we have a question from Juliana, who asks, how has a virtual platform impacted leadership and building trust amongst teams?
Oh, you mean at the present time?
Yeah.
It would seem that way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's this is something that I thought a lot during the pandemic and during I was writing my book, and you have to be more aware of the people in front of you through the screen, because there's so much going on the other side, behind the screen. And this is where leaders must be more human focused. Just look at the people, at the eyes, the position, the other people, the person's talking, everything you see, everything you might feel in the way that person is expressing herself or himself will tell you something. Yeah.
Not having the human in front of you physically, of course, can be considered a strong disadvantage. But having the person in the screen, where the person must, of course, present itself, you can, with a much more discerning human dimension, assess and analyze and influence the people more than people, I think, really believe. Because as Marie-Claude said, their eyes, their actions, their body language says so much, and just the tone of their voices far more, and you become far more astute in analyzing it than when we're just standing, amongst each other.
Thank you for that. It's certainly part of what we're living with now, so that helps. We have a question from Stacy, who wonders about the difference between benevolent leadership that you're speaking about and a mindset of servant leadership.
Yeah. I read about servant leadership, and unfortunately, the translation for benevolent, it's because it's leadership bienveillant, and it's there's a nuance that is it's not there. So the servant leadership is to serve your people, and the benevolent leadership is there's a reciprocity in the leadership, and it's to make sure that you all have the well of the organization at heart, and you don't consider your staff as human resources. They are not resources. They are human beings working with you. And it's different. There are elements that are similar, but when I decided the benevolent leadership, I've been through the servant one, and I decided to choose the benevolent leadership because I thought it was more adapted and more profound for human beings. Yeah, based on my research and my feelings and what I'd been through with my organization.
There's a reciprocity here that doesn't establish a pecking order of the leadership. It is interactive, and it is interactive on the individual side, on the human side, and not purely the technical managerial side that we are so used to with the normal processes of who decides what and so on. There is that ability to bring people to synergize together as part of the leadership construct, and not as a element of receiving whatever that leadership philosophy might be. You've actually participated in influencing both the leader and the leader influencing you in maximizing your potential. So it's so different. It's so quite surprising.
Yeah, because one is it's serving, the other one is being.
Yeah,
you're being benevolent.
yeah.
So it's all of the behaviors. Yeah.
And I think there's a word in French, and I've learned that we often say German and so on. Bienveillant is not exactly benevolent in the English translation, and I think bienveillant is going to come as a term that is going to be accepted as the true definition of this style, of this culture of leadership, that has so much more of the women influence in leadership is ill-defined still, and is making its way through. And it is this human openness that is permitting it to flourish and to influence the old male-dominated methodologies of the past, to the betterment of the individuals as well as the organization.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarity, and I trust our audience does as well, that that focus on the reciprocity is significant. We have a couple more questions. I'm going to see if I can squeeze them in. Catherine is wondering about how can leaders better connect to community to guide with hope and considered balance out of post-pandemic times?
I think that what is going to be crucial, let me give you an example. We go to war, the war is over, and then everybody seems to will go back to normal, if we can use the term, and we do the maintenance of the equipment and training of the people and so on, and then we have the veterans, of course. But one problem is that those who were in actions, those who are in the business, even though the war is over, for them, the war isn't over. They're still living the consequences of the wars. We have so many walking wounded that are among us that this pandemic has created, let alone other experiences, that if we don't recognize that there's going to be a surge of demand of human engagement, of leaders being far more present, far more overtly communicating both sides, what affected them as well as what's affecting the team, and how the individuals in the team can find a serenity within that leadership, you're going to have a lot more casualties than even you had during the pandemic, because they're going to be carrying a weight that now the fear of the pandemic is over, and all those boxes of those bad experiences are going to start coming out, and they're going to affect the people. So it is a most demanding time to put those people up front and to remind the leaders of that as they move forward post-pandemic.
Well, they will need a lot of support and care. All these leaders and the staff, but leaders often and most of the time they don't take care of themselves, because they will put their staff first, but they will have to take care of themselves. And
reinforce their capabilities and they can build that by giving enforcement to the people that are with them, and having that vulnerability realized that it can be exchanged honorably and responsibly, and that they can reinforce each other.
Thank you. And I think that touches on a question from Juliana, who was asking about how can benevolent leadership help prevent burnout, especially where people may be emotionally drained by the end of the day. So as you're touching on, exemplifying ways of caring.
what I can say about the experience that I did at the center is that when I was on leave, I had people living on leave, on sick leave as well. But with all the principles that we applied and the change of culture and putting the human first and giving them the right to be sick and to take sick leave, and but also I within these 4 years we implemented internal service to accompany people who were suffering. And well, at the end of 4 years, well, people were better, really better. So it's changing all in the organization. So yeah,
it's a significant atmosphere change of engagement of human beings with human beings, and that leadership is not an ego-based autocratic sort of construct, top down and looking purely at performance, but it is a human endeavor where some humans and other humans have different levels of responsibility and can implement each other a better and a more synergistic result.
But in this specific situation, well, the person would have left before the end of the day in a benevolent culture because she was exhausted. So yeah.
Yes. And one last question, thanks to those who have stuck with us through this, really helpful. There's a question about if you are going to join a new organization or moving between departments, how could you get a sense of what someone's leadership style is before joining?
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, you should ask your new colleagues first. And an interesting point is try to find out about the codes. What are the codes in this new team? The codes are the behaviors that people are exhibiting, and just, and it will tell you a lot about the culture in place, and this culture will tell you about the leader in place.
Yeah. The leader sets the tone. And so it is by you can nearly smell it when you can watch a leader engaged with the staffs, or the reactions of the staff, or the atmosphere of the staff. And one of the first things you do is you go and you do a walkabout. You walk about that place, and you just, you're just passing through if you can. You're sensing what's coming there, looking at retention rates, looking at the number of people who are injured and have gone on sick leave, because of the impacts of that. Look if they got a peer support system. Look if there's a willingness of communication, not emails. I'm talking about human communication. This instrument we're using can be very powerful in describing what a leader is, and vice versa. And so, is it being used? Are they being heard? And do they have really a sense that they own part of the leadership role of the organization to achieve the mission?
Thank you so much to both of you, General Dallaire and Marie-Claude. This has been a great insight into the benevolent leadership theme and how that impacts organizational culture. And I know this is just a snapshot. There are additional principles, and this presentation can be as a keynote type style, or I know it can be a couple hours workshop with a lot more engagement. So we're looking forward to seeing how the program evolves, and of course can be bilingual as well. There was a question about the book, if it's in English, and I understand it may be coming out in English sometime later this year.
Modest. Yep.
Yes, so lots to look forward to. And thank you again so much for your time and for our audience joining us and for your engagement in the program. I love seeing some of the chat comments. Excellent presentation, very powerful. Thank you, David. And thank you for being open and sharing with us.
Thank you.
Well, you take care, and you take care of yourself and your team. As we know, we've been together for a long time, and we hope to be, in fact, very useful to changing cultures and saving a lot of people from a lot of hurt, and being feeling that they not only belong, but they've been really participatory in achieving the mission that whatever their organization is trying to do.
And we're there for them.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, anytime.
Thank you. Thank you. It's already making an impact. Much appreciated. And we will have a recording and a follow-up email for those who registered, so that you can revisit the program, share with some of your colleagues, and consider how benevolent leadership might make an impact for your organization. Thanks again. Enjoy the day.
You
Bye,
too.
Teresa. Bye-bye.